Now, why I said this is an important component to build upon. These people that are being spoken about are hypocrites that know they are doing it for show. What about someone who wants to be sincere and doesn't think it is for show? And that's where you start to look for the signs. These are people that embodied hypocrisy, and they knew it, and they knew they were not doing these noble things for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They knew they were doing it for the glory of the cause. Before social media, before anything that would cause anything to be broadcasted, they knew they were there for falsehood, and they disguised themselves with truth. But what about the rest of us when there might be some signs of it? What are the signs of insincerity that could overtake a believer? And there are 5 things that the scholars mention, and it is more important now than ever for us to remind ourselves and to renew ourselves. Number 1, a person who doesn't renew their intentions. It starts with that. We're a religion where we are taught to renew our intentions every single day, every single morning, before every single act of worship. And so naturally, with the extensions of that, renew your intention. Why do you do what you do? Why do you do what you do? Number 2, that a person does not embed the private component of that goodness when others are not paying attention. If the only time you do good work is when other people see it, then that's a sign, right? That it's not actually for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because you should be acting for the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The public nature of something that you do should be an extension of the work and a necessity of the cause, not something that you actively seek. So if you ditch the private and only do the public, then that is a sign of insincerity as well. Number 3, that you're disappointed when you're not celebrated. That you're disappointed when you're not celebrated. You're disappointed when you're not acknowledged by people. A person should not be disappointed when they're not acknowledged. The person should instead say, Alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saved my ajr, saved my good all the way for that day, and I hope to preserve some of it. Number 4, that you quit when you're attacked. One of the greatest signs that public service is for the public is when the public turns on you and you ditch the service, right? So when someone gets involved in something good and they get punched in the process, not physically, no one should be punching you physically, but metaphorically, you get punched in the process, right? And that causes you to abandon public good. You say, you know what? The people don't appreciate me, therefore I will not do any more for the people. Well, then that's a sign that you aren't doing it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the first place. And so you don't abandon the cause when you are not celebrated. You don't quit when you are attacked. And the last one is the most important when it comes to the time component. You don't walk away when everybody else walks away. You don't walk away when everybody else walks away. SubhanAllah, things capture our attention and everybody gets excited about a noble cause. And then eventually, attention moves on. Our attention spans are getting shorter and shorter and shorter. Our attention moves on. And there are going to be people that are going to look around and say, no one's talking about this anymore. No one's posting about it anymore. No one's protesting anymore. No one's praying about it anymore. No one's giving to it anymore. I guess we can all move on now. Your sincerity will show in your ability to stay committed once everybody else has moved on. And this is especially true for Palestine. How many times in the past have things, quote unquote, flared up and everyone got on board, but then as quickly as everyone got on board, everyone got off board as well. Sincerity is to stay committed when everybody else moves on. And I want to end with this point in particular. Someone might say, you know, when I do this stuff, I don't know if I'm protesting for the sake of Allah anymore. You know, I don't know if I'm posting for the sake of Allah anymore. I don't really know if I'm giving for the sake of Allah anymore. I don't know if I'm showing up for the sake of Allah anymore. What's the fine line, right? Should we completely eliminate the public element of this cause when our greatest strength is the publicizing of this cause? What's the fine line? I don't know if I should be doing anymore. And I want us to, inshallah ta'ala, leave with this thought. One sincere servant to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is better than 1,000 insincere people to a good cause. One sincere servant is better to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than 1,000 insincere people. But 1,000 servants struggling with their sincerity is better to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than one sincere servant. 1,000 people who make it part of their mujahada, part of their striving to continuously strive against their intentions and continuously make sure that they're there for the right reasons, doing for the right reasons, is far more beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than one person who has seemingly already arrived. If you listen to this whole khutbah and you thought of everybody else but yourself, please turn that lens inwards. None of us are immune. Otherwise, Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, who was narrating the hadith, would not have cried 3 times and wept before he could even get the hadith out of his mouth. We're all imperfect, striving servants to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But do not think at any point that your intentions are immune, whatever it is that you're doing. Or that it's unimportant to keep on checking your intentions. I don't care how often we're doing what we're doing. Recalibrate every single day, every single time you do anything, something as simple as posting something on social media. If you can take a moment and renew your intention with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, do it at that moment. And keep your private worship for your brothers and sisters as much as your public activism. Now is not the time to remove our private worship. Now is the time to inject it in our public work. Because that's what's going to cause us to outlast everybody else bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. And your Lord is just, your Lord is merciful, as long as you are striving. None of us will be perfect in our activism, and none of us will be perfect in our sincerity. But your Lord is just, and your Lord is most merciful. وَكَانَ سَعْيُكُمْ مَشْكُورًا. And your Lord is grateful for your efforts, so long as you are trying to make sure that those efforts remain for Him and for Him alone. May Allah purify our hearts. May Allah purify our intentions. May Allah purify our deeds. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow all of us to do solely for Him and in a way that solely benefits our brothers and sisters in Palestine and the oppressed all over the world. Allahumma ameen. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروا إنه هو الغفور الرحيم.